another of our first-round matches, and what a game we have as the Wildcats of Walter Johnson take on the Patriots of Thomas Wootton, the winner earning an automatic bid to the round of 12 playoffs here on Quizmaster Challenge. Now let's meet the starting lineups for today's first-round match, beginning with the Wildcats of Walter Johnson. First for the Wildcats is Adam Newman. He's a 16-year-old junior in his second season on our show. Up next is the captain, Zach Hummer, an 18-year-old senior in this, his fourth year as a starter and second year as the WJ captain. Now meet James Cohn, an 18-year-old senior in his second year on our show. And rounding out the squad is the anchor of the team, Alex Price. He's a 16-year-old junior in his second year as a starter. This Walter Johnson team is prepared by 2001 and 2003 County Coach of the Year, Mark Whipple. He's a physics and astronomy teacher and Dartmouth College graduate whose WJ teams have won the 2 national championships in academic competition, one in 1997 and one in the year 2000. He's in his 12th season guiding the Wildcats. Let's go up top now and meet the young scholars and coach from Thomas Wootton High School. First for the Patriots is Andrew Sun. He's a 17-year-old senior in his first year on our show. Up next is the captain, Mike Yan, a 17-year-old senior, also in his first year as a starter. Now meet Dan Barron, a 17-year-old senior in his first year on our show. And rounding out the squad is the anchor of the Wootton team, David Chen, a 16-year-old junior in his first year of televised competition. This Wootton team is prepared by physics teacher Michael Thompson, a University of Notre Dame graduate in his third season, guiding the Patriots. Good luck to both teams' players as we begin the match with the Four Corners round, the only non-competitive round in Quizmaster Challenge. You know how it goes. You'll have the chance to answer blocks of 4 questions each, and you'll earn 20 points for each correct response. Based on our coin flip before today's match, it'll be Walter Johnson making the first selection, Captain Hummer and his Wildcat teammates choosing from these 4 corners topics. Focus on F, headlines of the 1920s, colonial America, momentous in March. Captain Hummer, your selection, please.
F.
Focus on F it is for Walter Johnson. Identify the Italian-born physicist who won the 1938 Nobel Prize in the same year he moved to the United States and who in 1942 produced the first controlled nuclear chain reaction in a squash court at the University of Chicago.
Fermi.
20 points. For another 20, identify the founder of the Society of Friends, today called Quakers, whose surname may be defined as any of the animals of the genus Vulpes related to dogs and wolves.
Fox.
George Fox for 20 more. Tell me now the name of the last king of Egypt whose defeat in the first Arab-Israeli War of 1948-49 and whose extravagant lifestyle led to his unpopularity and to his overthrow by Gamal Nasser in 1952.
Farouk.
Is correct. And to run this category on Focus on F, we note that the Islas Malvinas is the Spanish name for what group of 200 islands found 300 miles east of the Strait of Magellan, which became in 1982 the site of a short-lived war between Argentina and Great Britain.
Falklands.
So all 80 points for Walter Johnson. We're up top now to Wootton High School, Captain Yan and his teammates choosing from our remaining 3 Four Corners topics.
March.
Momentous in March it is. We note that perhaps the most famous words spoken on March the 10th, 1876, were Mr. Watson, come here, I want you. Spoken into his invention, the telephone, by what man?
Bell. Bell.
Good for 20 points. For another 20 points, what Russian czar by name and number ordered the Duma to disband on March the 11th, 1917, thus bringing about an uprising that led to his ouster and to the execution of him and his family?
Nicholas II.
Is correct for 20 more. Tell me now the name of the 1848 treaty signed between the U.S. and Mexico in March 1848 that ended the Mexican War after successful battles at Buena Vista and Veracruz.
Guadalupe Hidalgo.
Is correct. And to run this category on Momentous in March, identify the name of the nuclear facility on the Susquehanna River near Harrisburg, where on March 28, 1979, a series of accidents took place leading to fears, ultimately unfounded, of a nuclear disaster.
3 Mile Island.
Is correct. So all 80 points for Wootton based on the rules of Quizmaster Challenge. Captain Yan now makes a selection from one of our 2 remaining topics, and I'll be reading those 4 questions back to the WJ Wildcats.
1920s.
Headlines of the 1920s, WJ, here it comes. 2 of the most sensational trials of the 1920s, the Scopes trial and the Leopold and Loeb trial, both featured what same defense lawyer?
Darrow.
20 points. For another 20, identify the Republican candidate who celebrated his birthday on November the 2nd, 1920, by defeating Democrat James Cox to win the presidency with Calvin Coolidge as his vice president.
Harding.
20 more. Tell me now the name of the Secretary of the Interior in Warren Harding's administration, who resigned his post in March 1923 amid scandal concerning a Senate investigation of oil leases at Teapot's Dome.
No, it's fall.
Fall.
Albert Fall is correct, and to run this category on headlines of the 1920s, we note that Mrs. Nellie Taylor Ross becomes the first woman in the nation to serve as governor when she fills out the remainder of her late husband's term in what state? With capital at Cheyenne.
Wyoming.
So all 80 points for WJ on the back half of the four corners, and that leaves colonial America for Thomas Wootton. The first ever smallpox inoculations in the colonies took place in 1721, as patients received the shots from Dr. Zabadale Loyalston in what present-day city, today the largest by population in New England. Can you take
Boston.
it? Is correct for 20. For another 20, we note that the need to keep the Spanish from moving north from Florida was one reason for the founding in 1733 of Georgia by what man as he used his land grant as a haven for English debtors?
Oglethorpe.
It's Oglethorpe. I cannot accept that. No points. Tell me now the name of the 1755 battle in the French and Indian War in which General Edward Braddock is mortally wounded when his British troops and colonial militia are caught in an ambush near the site of present-day Pittsburgh. Can you take it?
Vicksburg.
It was Fort Duquesne, so no points there. And we close out the category on colonial America as you identify the school founded in the early 1700s as the third college in the colonies, as Congregationalists displeased with Harvard's liberal leanings started a school that would move later to New Haven, its present site.
Yale.
It is correct. So 40 out of 80 on the back half of the four corners for Wootton. That correct response moves us out of our first period of play and into the first of our three competitive rounds, the 10-point toss-up round. Players, you'll earn that point value for a correct response. No penalty for an incorrect response, but the question will be flipped over now and completed for the second team, chance at those 10 toss-up points. As we move into the first of our three competitive rounds, a quick check of the score shows WJ 160, Wootton 120. We open the competitive scoring with this 10-pointer up for grabs on At the Movies 2004. Jason Patrick, Billy Bob Thornton, and Dennis Quaid all starred in 2004 in a less than well-received film depicting events leading up to the slaughter.
Walter Johnson, Price.
Alamo. Say it. The Alamo.
It is correct for 10 points. Up next, a 10-pointer on the solar system. What same planet name is common to these two musical clues? It's one of the movements in Gustav Holst's The Planets. It's the nickname of Wolfgang Mozart's Symphony No. 41.
Jupiter.
Johnson, phone.
Jupiter.
It is the Jupiter Symphony, good for 10 points for WJ. For 10 points on two-word scientific terms, identify the two-word term that completes this quote from Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. I have called this principle by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved by the term of blank blank.
Natural
Walter
selection.
Johnson, Price.
I would think so. Natural selection.
Good for 10 points. To the monitor players, for the first of our visual questions, this 10-pointer on biology. The most common food reserves in humans are fat, and which
Wootton, Chen.
Glycogen.
is correct. Good for 10 points for Wootton. Pencil and paper at the ready, players, as we go after our first matching question. This 10-pointer on deserts, as you match the deserts to the continent on which each is found. First, the deserts. Mojave, Nubian, Gobi, Great Sandy.
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Africa, Asia, Australia.
Please begin your response.
North America, Africa, Asia, Australia.
Is correct for 10 points. Musical tribute's the topic for this next up for grabs. When Irving Berlin in 1926 penned the song Trudy, he did so to honor what 19-year-old athlete who that year became the first woman to swim the English
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Ederly here. Ederly.
Gertrude Trudy Ederly, good for 10 points. We're halfway through the round. A quick check of the score shows Walter Johnson 210, Wootton 130 as you go after this question on history timeline, identifying the single decade in which these three events all occurred. Alfred Nobel, who would later endow Nobel Prizes, is born. Victoria becomes Queen of England on the death of William IV. Martin Van Buren takes
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
1830s. 1830s. Sure. 30s, yes. 1830s.
good for 10 points. Pencil and paper at the ready, players, as we go back to this 10-point math question on the monitor. If two sides of a rhombus have values of 5x plus 7 and 6x minus 1, what is the value of x?
Wootton, Chen,
7.
Incorrect. Question is complete.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
6.
8 the answer. No points for either team. For 10 points on not-so-noted nonfiction, we note that One World, a nonfiction book published in 1943, which outlined ideas for international cooperation, was written by what Republican politician who was defeated by FDR in 1940?
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Landon?
Landon.
Is incorrect. I'll complete. In the 1940 presidential election, Wootton, buzz if you want it. Wendell Willkie, the answer, so no points for either team. 10 points now to the team with a correct answer to this question on footnotes to history. Captain William Bligh finally came ashore on Timor in 1789 after being set adrift.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
The Bounty?
The Bounty is correct, by Fletcher Christian and other mutineers aboard what British vessel? Check your buzzer speed with this question on U.S. cities for 10 points, players, as you tell me the name of the New England city settled by English colonists from Massachusetts in 1636.
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Providence? Or Salem?
Salem.
I'll complete. And which today is known as the insurance capital of the world and the capital of Connecticut. Buzz if you want it, Wootton.
Wootton, Yan.
Hartford?
Hartford for 10 points. And we close out the 10-point round with this question on mythology and mathematics, players, as you tell me how many total eyes you would have if you combined all the eyes found on these 3 mythic figures. Cerberus, Polyphemus, Circe.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Is it 2 plus 1 plus 21? 9. 9.
9 is correct for mythology and mathematics. That correct response from Walter Johnson brings us to halftime of Quizmaster Challenge. Let's take a moment to meet each of the young scholars in today's first round match, beginning with Walter Johnson and Mr. Newman.
Hi, I'd like to thank my mom for coming out to support us and always bringing food.
Thank you. Up next, the captain, Mr. Hummer.
I'd like to thank our interim principal, Dr. Guerin.
Okay, here's Mr. Cohn.
Hi, I'd like to thank our numerous alternates.
Thank you. And the anchor of the squad, Mr. Price.
Hi, I'd like to thank our coach, Mr. Whipple.
Up top now to Wootton High School. First, Mr. Sun.
Hi, I'd like to
Thank Mr. Thompson, our coach.
Okay, Mr. Yan, our captain.
Hi, I'd like to thank our principal, Ms. Dr. Doran.
Thank you. Mr. Barron.
I'd like to thank our alternate, Eddie, for coming out and supporting us.
And the anchor of the squad, Mr. Chen.
I'd like to thank all the other people of the academic team that practiced with us.
Okay, and players, before we start the second half, as always, the opportunity to thank some people as well. I want to thank the television production students under the direction of John Horvat here at Seneca Valley High School. Those television production students do all the behind-the-scenes work, audio, visual, camera, everything, bringing you Quizmaster Challenge each week. I'd especially like to recognize Priya Kumar, whose voice you hear calling the players' names in on each of our toss-up questions, and also recognize today Joy Botchway, working camera number 2, giving you close-ups of many of the players during today's buzzing in rounds. Players, we start the second half now with the 15-point round. You'll earn the point value for a correct response. No penalty for an incorrect response, but once again, the question completed flipped over to the second team for a chance at those players to take on those 15 toss-up points. As we start the second half, a quick check of the score shows Walter Johnson 240, Wootton 140. We open the scoring with this 15-pointer up for grabs on Commemorations 2004. Thousands of men and women in Civil War costumes lined the streets of Charleston in April 2004 for a ceremony in which the remains of 8 men were interred in a Confederate cemetery 140 years after they had drowned while aboard what?
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Henley?
Cannot take that. Question is not complete. They had drowned aboard what Confederate submarine? Wootton, buzz if you want it. It's the Hunley, so no points for either team. For 15 points on presidential administrations, we note that American Samoa, Guam, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines all became U.S. possessions during the administration of what 25th?
Walter Johnson, Cone.
McKinley.
It was William McKinley for 15 points. To the monitor players for this question on quotations, we have nothing to arbitrate. These words were spoken in 1893 by what man who refused to negotiate with strikers who were trying to shut down?
Walter Johnson, Cone.
Debs? I would think. Debs?
I will complete. With strikers who were trying to shut down the railway car company that bore his name. Wootton, buzz if you want it.
Wootton, Yan.
Pullman?
It was the Pullman strike, good for 15 points. Here's a 15-pointer on chemistry players as you answer this choice question. Which of the following particles has the same mass as an electron but has a positive electric charge? Would it be?
Wootton, Yan.
Positron.
Without the choices, good for 15 points on the early buzz. Check your depth of knowledge, players, with this 15-pointer up for grabs on American writers. As we note that the Iron Heel is a muckraking work from the turn of the 20th century by what American writer, better known for fiction works that include the short story To Build a Fire, and...
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
London.
It is Jack London in novels like White Fang and Call of the Wild. Check the monitor, players, as you go after this question on European history. Here you see.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
The Alhambra.
The Alhambra, without much of a clue, here you see, and you buzz in for 15 points. Nice run. We're halfway through the round. The check of the score shows WJ 285, Wootton 170. Pencil and paper at the ready, players, for our next toss-up, this 15-pointer on math. Give either value of k for which the expression x squared plus kx plus 16 is a perfect square trinomial.
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Say it.
4.
Is incorrect. Question is complete. Can you take it?
Wootton, Chen.
Plus or minus 8.
Is correct. Giving either value, only needed one, but both are correct and good for 15 points. For 15 points on names the same, try this. What same male first name is common in these instances? It's the middle name of LBJ's vice president, Hubert Humphrey. It's the only name of Hamlet's friend in Shakespeare's play. And
Wootton, Yan.
Horatio.
it is Horatio for 15 points for Wootton. To the monitor, players, pencil and paper at the ready for this question on state nicknames. As you match this list of nicknames with the list of states which have them, here come the states. Connecticut, New Hampshire, South Dakota,
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Yeah. Tennessee, South Dakota, Connecticut, New Hampshire.
is correct. Good for 15 points. Here's a toss-up on physics choice. Gravitational force is to mass as electric force is to which of these? Would it be weight?
Wootton, Chen.
Charge.
It is charge, again without the choice, good for 15 points. Here comes a 15-pointer on scientific advancements as you tell me the name of the noted scientist who in 1543 published his Concerning the Revolutions of the Heavenly...
Walter Johnson, Cone.
Yeah, it's Copernicus.
It is Copernicus on the early buzz there, and we close out the third period of play with this 15-pointer on noted quotations. A thing of beauty is a joy forever.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Is it Keats and Endymion?
Okay.
Keats.
Keats is correct, from Endymion, the poet also known for Ode on a Grecian Urn and on First Looking into Chapman's Homer. Those 15 points to WJ. We move out of the third period of play and into our final round of play, the bonus round. Players, you'll have the chance to answer up to 10 toss-ups worth 15 points, and with a correct response, then a bonus just to your team worth between 20 and 30 points. Still, again, no penalty for an incorrect response on the toss-up question, but the question will be completed, flipped over to the second team for a chance at those 15 points, and of course the bonus worth 20, 25, or 30 points. As we move into our final round of play with potentially as many as 400 points and more available to our two teams, a check of the score shows WJ 330, Wootton 215. We open the scoring in the final round with this 15-pointer up for grabs on first-person accounts, playing for the chance at our first bonus of the game, a 30-pointer on the year 1959. Quote, the distance from New York to Albany is 150 miles. I ran it up in 32 hours, close quote. So wrote what man in 1807 describing how he had traveled by steamboat up?
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Yeah.
Fulton.
It was Robert Fulton for 15 points. Here's your 30-point bonus on the year 1959. Captain Hummer, I'll come to you for your team's consensus response. First for 10 points, what president in 1959 invokes the Taft-Hartley Act to stop a steel strike after 116 days?
Eisenhower.
Good for 10 points. Second, what Cuban president flees in early 1959 as troops led by Fidel Castro take over his country?
Batista.
Good for 10 more. And finally, what territory becomes the 50th state
Hawaii.
in 1959? All 30 points on the bonus. We're playing now for a 20-point bonus on the ancient world, which goes to the team with a correct answer to this 15-pointer up for grabs on presidential nicknames. Last of the cocked hats was one nickname afforded in the first quarter of the 19th century to what man whose 2 terms in office helped characterize the times as an era?
Wootton, Yan.
Monroe.
It was Monroe for 15 points. Here's your 20-point bonus on the ancient world. 10 points for each correct response. Captain Yan, I'll come to you for your team's consensus on this and subsequent bonus questions. First for 10 points, give the 3-word name the ancient Romans gave to the specific day in 44 BC on which Julius Caesar was murdered in the Roman Senate.
Ides of March.
Good for 10 points. And for another 10 points, give the 7-letter name for the Greek military formation in which soldiers used overlapping shields for protection, spears as weapons.
Phalanx.
Phalanx is correct, so all 20 points on the bonus for Wootton. Correct answer to this 15-pointer on German geography earns for your team the chance at a 25-point bonus on presidential trivia. The German government in 1982 named a street outside Berlin's Olympic Stadium.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Jesse Owens.
Early buzz and correct. Great anticipation for 15 points. Presidential trivia players, these questions, 5 points each. First, what president became the first ever successful dark horse candidate in 1844?
Polk.
5 points. Second, what president was the first to live in the White House, moving in with his wife Abigail in the year 1800?
John Adams.
5 points. Third, which president was the first left-hander and second president assassinated?
Yeah, Garfield. Okay. Garfield.
5 points. Fourth, who was the first Republican to serve 2 full terms as president?
Grant.
Grant.
Is correct. And finally, what president had a group of informal advisors he called the kitchen captain?
Jackson.
All 25 points on the bonus. We have a 30-point bonus on February the 26th in history. You'll earn it with a correct response to this 15-point visual toss-up on biology. On the monitor, the structure and function of the nervous system in an earthworm is most similar to the structure and function.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Grasshopper.
15 points. Here's your 30-pointer, 10 points each on February 26th in history. These 3 questions. First, Congress on February 26, 1919, establishes Grand Canyon National Park in what state?
Arizona.
10 points. February 26, the year 2000, Pope John Paul II visits what Egyptian mountain to pray near the Old Testament site on which Moses received the 10 Commandments?
Sinai.
Good for 10 more. And finally, to run the bonus, Saddam Hussein announces on Baghdad radio on February 26, 1991, that he has ordered all Iraqi troops to withdraw from what neighboring country?
Kuwait.
So all 30 points there. We have an opportunity to 30-point bonus on Pennsylvania history. You'll earn it with a correct response to this 15-pointer up for grabs on Shakespearean characters. Listen to these lines from Shakespeare's Hamlet and identify the speaker. Neither a borrower nor a lender.
Walter Johnson, Hummer.
Hamlet.
Is incorrect. I'll complete. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. Wootton, can you take it?
Wootton, Yan.
Polonius.
15 points. Here's your bonus on Pennsylvania history, 10 points for each correct response. First for 10 points, what woman born Elizabeth Griscom in 1752 is credited in legend as having sewn the first American flag in Philadelphia?
Bessie Ross.
Good for 10 points. Second, what 15th U.S. president was born in Pennsylvania?
Buchanan.
10 points. And finally, name the Pennsylvania city inundated by floodwaters in 1889 after a dam broke on the Conemaugh River.
Johnstown.
All 30 points on the bonus. We're more than halfway through the round. A quick check of the score shows Walter Johnson 460, Wootton 295. Here's a 15-pointer on literature and geography, a correct response earning for your team the chance at a 20-point visual bonus on American authors. The German author Thomas Mann counts among his works a novel whose title...
Walter Johnson, Cone.
Venice.
It is in Death in Venice. Death places death in what Italian city? In great anticipation, here's your bonus, WJ. American authors on the monitor. The last of our visual questions. Here you see an engraving dating to the early 1800s and depicting what American writer, best known for short stories like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle.
Irving.
10 points. And for another 10 points, Irving lived the last part of his life on an estate along New York's Hudson River, still there today, given what name?
Sleepy Hollow.
Sure.
Sleepy Hollow.
Close, but it was Sunnyside, so no points on the second part of the bonus. Correct answer to this 15-point toss-up on 20th century documents earns for your team the chance at a 25-point bonus on History Timeline. The Pact of Paris is an alternate name for what 20th century document, signed on August the 27th, 1928, as a means...
Walter Johnson, Price.
Kellogg-Briand Pact.
That's correct. Good for 15 points. Here's your 25-point bonus, Walter Johnson. 5 points for each correct response as you give me a year ending in a 1 based on each of these clues. First for 5 points, in what year is Herbert Hoover President of the United States?
1931.
Good for 5 points. Second, in what year is Ronald Reagan shot by John Hinckley?
1981.
5 points. Third, in what year is Aaron Burr inaugurated as Vice President?
1801.
5 points. Fourth, in what year does Nathaniel Hawthorne publish The House of the Seven Gables?
41.
1841.
It was 1851, so no points there. And finally, in what year does William Lloyd Garrison begin publication of his anti-slavery newspaper, The Liberator?
1831.
Is correct. 20 out of a possible 25 on the bonus question. We have a 30-point bonus on a horse is a horse. You'll earn it with a correct response to this 15-pointer on great teachers. Ann Sullivan and Mary Agnes Thompson were the two central.
Walter Johnson, Newman.
2 Central.
2-minute warning, players. Do you have an answer?
Miracle Worker about Helen Keller.
Is correct. Good for 15 points. For 30 points on a horse is a horse, 10 points each, these 3 questions. First for 10 points, Al-Buraq was the white horse with wings of an eagle and a human face that belonged to what founder of Islam?
Muhammad.
10 points. Second, the Duke of Wellington rode a horse at Waterloo, named for what European capital city?
London?
Brussels.
It was Copenhagen. And finally, give the 3-word name of the conqueror of the first millennium BC, whose horse was Bucephalus.
Alexander the Great.
So 20 out of a possible 30 on the bonus for Walter Johnson. Pencil and paper at the ready, players, for this 15-point math question, playing for the chance at a 20-point bonus on Albert Schweitzer. If the slope of line segment KB is 3/4, and line segment KB is perpendicular to line segment
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Negative 4/3.
is correct. Here's your bonus, 10 points for each correct response, 20 points total on Albert Schweitzer. First for 10 points. Schweitzer won the Nobel Prize in the 1950s for his efforts at bringing modern medicine to what African nation with capital at Libreville?
Gabon.
10 points. And for another 10 points, Schweitzer wrote a biography of what composer known for such works as the Brandenburg Concertos and the Well-Tempered Clavier?
Bach.
All 20 points on the... Here's your final toss-up of the game, a 15-pointer on colleges and universities. You play for our 30-point bonus on world geography. Among the highest-paid college presidents nationwide in a 2004 study was I. King Jordan at number 13, who earned over $580,000 in 2003 as the president of what University for the Deaf in Washington?
Walter Johnson, Newman.
Gallaudet.
Is good for 15 points. Here's your final bonus of the game, a 30-pointer on world geography, 10 points for each correct response. First for 10 points, in what country could you visit the Hermitage Museum and Red Square?
Russia.
10 points. Second, in what country could you visit the Rijksmuseum and Anne Frank's house?
Netherlands.
10 points. And finally, not going to get to the last one on the Prado Museum being found in Spain. That whistle ends the game, players. We'll let the judges verify the final scores, and as they do so, I want to thank the sponsors of Quizmaster Challenge, the Montgomery County Teachers Federal Credit Union, with offices in North Rockville, Germantown, Wootton Plaza, and Gaithersburg, and Gladiator Trophies and Awards. They provide the championship trophies to our finalist teams here on Quizmaster Challenge. Well, the judges tell me the score is official, and with a big second half, it's Walter Johnson, 625, Wootton, 295. That means our winning team, the Wildcats of Walter Johnson, move automatically to the round of 12 playoffs. Wootton, hang in there. That 295 points could get you back in one of our wild card positions into the tournament grid. For Director John Horvat and for all of us in the studio, I'm Kevin Keegan. Thanks so much for watching, and come back next time as Damascus takes on Montgomery Blair in another first-round match here on Quizmaster Challenge. Till next time, Montgomery County, bye-bye.